Since the dawn of civilization, humanity has been ruled by blood, not by votes, not by gods, but by blood. The same crimson thread that ran through the veins of ancient kings still flows through those who sit in boardrooms, palaces, and temples today. They changed their names. They changed their empires. But they never changed their blood. From the pharaohs of Egypt to the Caesars of Rome. From the Merovingians of France to the bankers of modern Europe. One invisible lineage has guided the course of mankind. Some call them dynasties. Some call them demons. Others call them the Illuminati bloodlines. They are not bound by time because time serves them. They don't need to conquer nations because nations obey. Every war, every revolution, every new order was never born from chaos. It was inherited. Their power is not written in books. It's encoded in their DNA. The blood remembers. It carries memories older than history, older than the Bible, older than man himself. Every generation it seeks to preserve itself through secret unions, selective breeding, and now genetic engineering. They tried to erase the proof. They burned the scrolls, destroyed the temples, silenced the witnesses. But the blood cannot be destroyed. It hides behind empires, behind corporations, behind the illusion of democracy. You are about to enter the forbidden archive, a story written not in ink but in blood. Because power never died. It simply changed its face. This is the bloodline of the Illuminati. The families who never died. Every civilization, from the Sumerians to the Egyptians, from the Mayans to the Babylonians, shared one unshakable belief: that kings were not ordinary men. They were born from the gods themselves. Ancient tablets unearthed in Mesopotamia, older than the Bible, tell stories of the Anunnaki, celestial beings who descended from the sky to shape mankind. They were described as tall, radiant, and obsessed with genetic purity. The Sumerian word, Anunnaki, literally means those who came from the heavens. According to these texts, they did not merely rule over humans, they engineered them. The Enuma Elish, one of the oldest creation epics ever found, describes how the gods mixed their own essence with the clay of the earth to create humankind, servants with divine blood diluted just enough to be controlled. And yet, a few among those early humans retained more of that divine essence. They became the priest kings, the bloodline of rulers that spread from Sumer to Egypt, from Egypt to Rome, and from Rome into the dynasties of Europe. These bloodlines claimed divine right not as metaphor but as biology. When the ancient pharaohs of Egypt said they were sons of Ra, or when the Chinese emperors called themselves sons of heaven, they were echoing the same ancient story, a belief that their blood carried something extraordinary, something not of this earth. In 1995, geneticist Brian Sykes from Oxford University published research on the oldest human mitochondrial lineages. He found a handful of DNA patterns, haplogroups, that appeared again and again in royal mummies, European aristocracy, and ancient remains found across the Middle East. Coincidence? Maybe. But ancient societies did not believe in coincidence. They believed in inheritance. The Bible speaks of the Nephilim, the sons of God, who descended to earth and had children with mortal women, the so-called giants of old. Some historians and theologians now interpret this passage as a record of genetic hybridization, an attempt to preserve divine blood within certain families. Archaeological digs in Mesopotamia have even revealed skeletons with unusual skull elongations, artificially modified, yes, but possibly imitating a genetic feature that ancient people once associated with godhood. And when the flood myth appears across dozens of civilizations, it might not only describe a cataclysm, but a genetic reset, a cleansing of corrupted bloodlines, leaving only the chosen to rebuild civilization. From those survivors, a few lines endured, the houses that would later become the backbone of ancient monarchies, mystery schools, and, eventually, the secret orders of Europe. Today historians refer to them as dynasties. But in the oldest languages they had a simpler name: the Keepers of the Blood. Their mission? To protect a genetic heritage stretching back to the dawn of civilization. To preserve the essence of the gods hidden within the veins of mankind. As the millennia passed, this divine inheritance became the currency of power. Not gold, not armies, blood. Because whoever carried that blood carried the right to rule. As the ancient empires fell, their bloodlines did not. They simply changed their names and their symbols. In the shadows of the Middle Ages, as Europe was torn by war and plague, the surviving descendants of the old divine bloodlines created a new kind of empire, one hidden behind faith, secrecy, and power. The world called them knights, monks, and nobles. But behind the masks of holiness, they were something else entirely: the keepers of the blood. After the fall of Rome, fragments of the old world gathered in secret brotherhoods. The most powerful of them all, the Knights Templar. Officially, they were a holy order sworn to protect pilgrims. But in truth, they became the first international bankers, the first intelligence network, and the guardians of forgotten relics said to hold traces of divine DNA. The Templars discovered something beneath the ruins of Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem, something that terrified both kings and popes. Ancient scrolls, perhaps. Or the bones of those called Nephilim. Whatever it was, it gave them knowledge and power that no church or crown could match. Within a century, the Templars controlled more gold than any kingdom in Europe. Their symbol, the Red Cross, echoed the oldest emblems of divine sacrifice and blood. In 1307, King Philip IV of France and Pope Clement V destroyed them, or so history claims. But not all of them perished in the flames. Many escaped north into Scotland, Portugal, and Switzerland, where they merged into new secret societies. The Rosicrucians, the Freemasons, and the Order of the Golden Fleece all emerged from the ashes of the Templars. Each kept the same structure: a central Grand Master, inner circles of initiates, and a single mission: to preserve the sacred blood and guide humanity from the shadows. They replaced crowns with sigils, thrones with lodges, and swords with symbols. To the untrained eye, they seemed like philosophers and alchemists. But behind their rituals and codes lay something deeper: a belief that royalty was not earned by birthright alone, but by blood composition. Families like the Medici, the Borgia, and the Habsburgs became the new faces of this ancient order, marrying strategically, merging bloodlines, and funding the creation of modern Europe. The Vatican, desperate to reclaim control, created its own network: the Jesuits, masters of infiltration and manipulation, tasked to contain what they called the heretical bloodlines. And in this invisible war between orders, one rule was sacred: the blood must be preserved. By the 15th century, power in Europe no longer belonged to kings or priests. It belonged to those who could trace their ancestry and prove their purity. Their power didn't come from armies or borders. It came from bloodlines that stretched back to Sumer, Egypt, and Babylon. 1,000 years had passed, yet the same crimson thread ran through it all, from the tombs of pharaohs, through the halls of the Vatican, into the royal courts of Europe. Every symbol, every ritual, every coronation whispered the same truth: the divine right to rule was never about God. It was about genetics. And the medieval orders were not protectors of faith, they were the architects of a hidden empire. In the heart of medieval France, long before the rise of the Vatican's dominance, a royal dynasty claimed a power that no other dared to declare. The Merovingians, rulers of the Franks from the 5th to the 8th century, believed they were not merely kings, but the descendants of something divine. According to a series of ancient documents, collectively known as the Dossier's Secrets, unearthed in Paris in the 1960s, The Merovingians traced their bloodline back not to the Caesars, not to the tribes of Europe, but to Jesus of Nazareth himself. It's a claim that shook the foundations of Christian history, the idea that Jesus survived the crucifixion, married Mary Magdalene, and fathered a bloodline that would quietly continue through southern France. The story first emerged in medieval legends of the Grail, not as a cup, but as a sangreal, the royal blood. Over time, sangreal became Sangreal, or Holy Grail. The Grail was never an object. It was a lineage. The priesthood of the Priory of Chaon, a secret society that allegedly predates the Knights Templar, was said to exist for one purpose: to protect the descendants of Christ. The Merovingians, especially King Dagobert II, were believed to carry this sacred bloodline. Dagobert's reign was mysteriously cut short, assassinated in 679 AD, and his death marked the beginning of centuries of suppression. The Vatican erased his name from official history. His descendants were hunted, hidden, and absorbed into the noble families of Europe. But traces remained. Medieval seals, cathedral carvings, and family crests contained recurring symbols: the fleur-de-lis, the red cross, the rose, and the pentagram, all connected to the legend of the sacred feminine and the union of divine blood. The Church redefined Mary Magdalene as a sinner, a convenient erasure of her royal significance. Yet in the south of France, in Rennes-le-Château, local records, tombs, and coded manuscripts pointed to a hidden truth, a secret buried beneath the church itself. In 1891, a priest named Berenger Saunière discovered sealed parchments while restoring his small church. Those who saw them claimed they contained genealogies linking the ancient Merovingians to modern noble families, and to the bloodline of Christ. Within years, Saunière became inexplicably wealthy. He built lavish estates, decorated his church with occult symbols, and died under mysterious circumstances. His secret died with him, or perhaps it didn't. The Priory of Chaon, revived in the 20th century, included among its alleged Grand Masters figures such as Leonardo da Vinci, Isaac Newton, Victor Hugo, and Jean Cocteau, each believed to have encoded the secret bloodline into their art, science, and literature. Historians debate whether the society ever truly existed, but the symbols and the silence remain. Even today, the fleur-de-lis stands on the royal arms of France. The Vatican's architecture hides rose windows shaped like pentagrams, and the world's most powerful dynasties intermarry within the same circles. Coincidence or preservation? If the story of the Merovingians is true, then the divine bloodline didn't vanish. It simply went underground, encoded in art, architecture, and the DNA of Europe's elite. Because the true Grail was never lost. In the Old World, power flowed through bloodlines. In the New World, it flows through money. When the monarchies began to crumble, the descendants of Europe's sacred bloodlines didn't disappear, they evolved. What alchemy once promised, turning base metals into gold, became a metaphor for something far more dangerous: the transformation of belief into value. Gold was no longer the goal. Control was. The medieval alchemists spoke of prima materia, the invisible essence that gives form to everything. Centuries later, bankers and economists created their own version: credit, value from nothing, backed only by faith. This was not coincidence. It was a continuation. Many of the institutions that shape today's world trace their roots back to noble families: the Medici, the Fuggers, and later the Rothschilds, who mastered this new form of alchemy. The Medici Bank funded popes, kings, and wars, and created the first system of double-entry bookkeeping, a spell of numbers that allowed wealth to multiply itself. From the ashes of feudalism rose a new empire, one built not on swords but on ledgers. And the same ancient symbols that once adorned royal crests began to appear on coins, banknotes, and central bank seals. In the 17th century, secret societies such as the Rosicrucians and Freemasons revived the ancient teachings of transformation, but this time transformation of matter into capital. The philosopher's stone had changed form. It was no longer a mythical rock. It was a system. Paper, ink, and trust replaced gold and blood. And the few who understood this new power, those who could create value from nothing, became the architects of modern civilization. But behind every currency, every bank, and every empire lies the same structure. A hidden order of names that repeat through centuries. Kings were replaced by CEOs, priests by economists, temples by stock exchanges, yet the bloodlines that once ruled Europe still sit quietly in the background, disguised as institutions. The alchemy succeeded. They turned faith into debt, and debt into control. Money became the new divine substance, a global religion where belief creates reality. The transformation is complete. From blood to finance, from temples to banks, from the divine right of kings to the divine illusion of credit. The bloodline didn't vanish. It evolved, and what began with kings and empires now rules through banks, corporations, and algorithms. This was only the beginning. The second part will reveal how the same families that shaped history now shape your reality.